It started with a tree. A tall, beautiful oak in the back corner of my yard just standing there for years like an old friend waiting for something to happen. And for most of that time, it just stood. I mowed around it, raked its leaves, admired its silhouette in the evening light. But I never did anything with it. Until one spring, when I decided to build something I'd always dreamed of, a treehouse. Not some slapped-together childhood fort with a rickety ladder and a tarp roof, but an actual, well-designed, eco-conscious space. A place to read, write, and sip my coffee on quiet mornings. I consulted the city first, filed all the right paperwork, even triple-checked the HOA architectural guidelines. Height limits? Cleared. Setback rules? Followed. Shadow allowance? Not even close to infringement. I did it by the book because I didn't want drama, I wanted peace. But of course, I didn't factor in Sharon. Sharon lived next door. Retired school principal. Iron-pressed attitude. HOA board member for the past 12 years. Unofficial neighborhood critic for eternity. The kind of person who treats rules like scripture and opinions like law. From the moment she saw the first beam of that treehouse go up, I felt her judgment radiating over the fence like a heat lamp. She never confronted me direct lino, not Sharon. She came over once, smiling that tight, brittle smile, holding a mug of something steaming, and said, "Interesting choice you're making back there." I laughed, told her it was within all legal bounds. Even used reclaimed cedar to make it sustainable. She said, "Oh, so one of those projects." Like I just told her I was raising goats. That night, I caught her snapping pictures from her upstairs window. Thought maybe she was just venting to her friends, but no. Sharon doesn't vent. Sharon organizes. A few days later, a typed not-eno envelope showed up in my mailbox. Something about aesthetic harmony and how my elevated recreational structure disrupted the visual cohesion of the block. She cited multiple concerned neighbors, which, in Sharon speak, means herself and maybe her cat. I shrugged it off, until the flyers started showing up. She went around the block, taping these things to mailboxes, calling out my treehouse like it was an illegal billboard. She made a Nextdoor account called Skyline Sentinel 88 and started a thread titled, "What's Creeping Into Our Canopy?" She brought it up at the HOA meeting, suggesting the board implement a vertical uniformity clause. I sat in the back of that meeting, flipping through the same building permits I'd already emailed to the board twice. I didn't say a word. Sharon was up front, waving photos, her voice high and trembling with the righteous fury of someone whose lawn gnome had just been vandalized. I watched her spin this thing into a full-blown cultural war over siding, elevation, and this part kills MEP psychological shading. Like my treehouse was casting existential dread over her koi pond. Here's the thing. Sharon has a backyard shed that's leaning like it's on strike, 2 melted garden flamingos, and a plastic bench that's cracked right down the middle. And she was lecturing me about style. So, I decided if my modest treehouse bothered her that much, I might as well lean in. I started planning a second one. Not hidden behind foliage like the first, but right on the property edge closest to her. Fully compliant, but taller. Solar-powered lights. Frosted glass. A cantilevered deck that would gently elegantly peek over her fence line. I named it Northwatch, because sometimes pettiness is a form of art. I mentioned the project, casually, at a block barbecue. Loud enough for her to overhear. 3 days later, she sent an email blast to the entire neighborhood, calling herself the Community Visual Standards Officer. That's not a thing. But suddenly it was in her email signature. Sharon started walking the block with a clipboard, noting things like mulch depth and curtain color. She flagged a neighbor's hammock for being too bohemian. Tried to get wind chimes banned. She was spiraling. She proposed a committee, demanded a vote, and when the board tabled the idea, she pivoted to public shame. Every morning, she'd walk past my yard and say things like, "Still standing, huh?" to no one in particular. Once, she brought a tape measure and pretended to measure the tree's shadow angle. Said, "Just making sure your tree isn't stealing sunlight." But here's the best part: she couldn't stop me. I had permits. I had plans. I had a contractor who built eco-villages in Costa Rica. And most importantly, I had patience. She filed complaints. Claimed the treehouse was a surveillance post. Said it disrupted wind patterns. Said it might attract crows. She even cited a court case from Michigan in the 90s, completely unrelated to claim my platform qualified as a second dwelling. My lawyer laughed so hard he snorted. Then, Sharon made her fatal mistake. She tried sabotage. One night, just after midnight, my motion cameras caught her sneaking into my yard in a black hoodie and a neon headlamp, carrying what looked like a battery-powered chainsaw. She crouched by the tree, poked it, then tried to saw off a small limb. Except she didn't realize how loud chainsaws are or that oak is, well, oak. She barely made a dent before two officers, called by me, arrived and caught her red-handed. She claimed she was conducting a structural safety inspection. In her pajamas. I didn't press charges. I didn't have to. The footage made the rounds. Someone set it to dramatic music and uploaded it to TikTok. Overnight, she became Chainsaw Sharon. At the next HOA meeting, she showed up wearing sunglasses indoors, a fake sling on her arm, and tried to introduce a motion banning all elevated wood structures within 50 feet of any property line. The board voted it down 6-1. The one was her. 3 weeks later, she was voted off the board. And me? I finished building Northwatch. It stands tall, legal, peaceful, with solar lights that reflect off her bedroom window from 7:14 to 7:38 every morning, just long enough to remind her. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud. It doesn't shout or gloat. Sometimes it's just beautiful, silent, elevated, and perfectly within code. But I knew it wasn't over. Not with Sharon. Because after her board removal, she tried something else. She emailed a local news station, claiming the Treehouse was part of a surveillance network being built by certain individuals with privacy violations in mind. She sent them blurry, zoomed-in photos of me drinking coffee on the deck, and called it elevated intimidation. I found out because a reporter from the station lives down the block. He forwarded me the email with a laughing emoji. Still, just to be safe, I gave a tour of the Treehouse to a real journalist who stopped by one afternoon. I explained the sustainable construction, the materials, the permits. She wrote a short piece titled, "Man Builds Eco-Friendly Retreat. Neighbor Cries Foul." It ran online for a day. Sharon commented 7 times under different usernames. By then, the neighborhood had shifted. People were tired of her dramatics. A neighbor built a tiny treehouse for his cat and labeled it, "Approved by Sharon." Another painted a mural of my treehouse on his garage door. Sharon called the police. The officer shrugged. But the moment I truly knew I'd won was when I received a letter from a local environmental nonprofit. They'd seen the article and wanted to feature my treehouse in their annual report as an example of green urban design. They sent a photographer. The photo ran full page. And in the corner, barely visible, you could just make out Sharon's porch dark, empty, and overgrown with weeds. If you've ever dealt with a Sharon, a petty neighbor, or just someone who thinks their taste should dictate everyone else's life, tell me your story in the comments. Whose side are you on? Was I too passive? Was she too much? Hit like, share this with a neighbor who needs to hear it, and don't forget always check your setbacks. Because sometimes, spite builds the best views.